All right, so it's already time to talk about paper number 3. So if you want to take your notebook out, I'll give you some very basic introductory details to the 3 authors that we have for the third paper. And I'll just very briefly mention the paper topics. I'm going to have a separate video that talks about paper number 3. So first things first, before I get into any of these readings, because there's a much wider selection of them for this third paper. And there's also 4 options for paper number 3. So that's also increased. So you'll notice every time we do a new assignment, aside from the fact that it builds on the previous one. So as you get papers back, there's comments that I hope will help you with doing the next paper. I've also got more options for you because, again, as we progress further into the semester, I want you to have more options in terms of your writing topics. So you're going to notice that also about these directions. And before I even talk about the 3 readings for next week, let me briefly also mention some things about the papers in general. Now that we've made our way up here through to the third paper of the semester. As I've said from the beginning of the semester, make sure that you're reading the directions. I think you'll find if you follow along with the directions for the papers that they'll be easier to do and they'll be way more manageable because the directions do map out everything you need for the assignment. The other thing to notice with paper number 3, as you start looking at the directions for based on these new readings, is that you're going to essentially have the same sort of structure for your paper as you did for paper number 2. So let me repeat that so you can make a note of it. I will do a separate video that focuses on the individual paper topics and how you might approach them. But no matter which of the 4 topics you select for this one, the structure is going to be the same as it was for paper number 2, which means you'll have your introduction, whereas usually you introduce your thesis and your main ideas. You will have your first half of the paper focusing on a summary and a response to whichever one of the 3 authors you're writing about, as I asked you to do for paper number 2. So the first half of the paper is going to be the same thing. You'll need at least a minimum of 2 quotations, and you can discuss those quotations in the first 2 body paragraphs after your introduction. So that's going to be the same as the last paper. And the analysis and discussion, again, based on which of the topics you select, will appear in the second half of the paper before the conclusion. So this is another essay that's going to be, about 6 to 7 paragraphs long or so. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So the structure of this paper is the same sort of structure as paper number 2 because it's an analytic paper. A couple of these have a little bit more of a narrative component to them, but they still have the analytical one that you had for the Susan Sontag paper. Okay, so also as you get those papers back, you can kind of see what I said about those. Now, some other things to keep in mind, especially now that we're on the 3rd paper of the semester, and after this we do the midterm already, is please, as I said, make sure you read the comments that I give you on your papers when you get them back. Some of the comments can be very simple in terms of formatting, like trying to, reminding you to indent your paragraphs and to make sure you've got at least, 4 body paragraphs to your paper. But some of them are more detailed. Some of them might be structural suggestions. I might have mentioned that, you've got to correct some of the formatting for MLA. So be aware of the comments that I'm giving back to you with these papers. We are going to have a revision assignment that we'll do later in the semester where you get to pick one of these shorter papers to revise. So that's another reason to kind of keep track. But again, every paper builds on the one that came before it. And so that's why paper 3, as I said, it's got a very similar structure to paper number 2. They're both analytical papers where you're responding, to one of the readings, and then you're also giving some of your own analysis. All right. And again, in the next video, I'll talk more about the actual paper topic. So it's just some general points to kind of think about as we get towards the midterm already. The fall semester moves along more quickly than you might expect. So for the readings for next week, I think you'll enjoy these because, again, there's a much wider variety. We've got an essay from Evelyn Glenny. Evelyn Glenny is a very well-known Scottish musician, and what's very fascinating about her is that she is deaf. So she had hearing as a child. You'll learn more about this in hearing essay. You'll also learn more about her if you watch the TED Talk, which I have the little video clip hooked up to the readings in the folder for the readings for paper number 3. And Glenny's a really fascinating figure. And I've included the video of her because you really also want to see how she presents her ideas. Because in addition to being a classical musician, She's also a very good teacher and a very world-renowned musical educator. So she's very good in terms of presenting her ideas, and also good at explaining her background, because as I said, she had hearing as a child. She was able to hear, but by the time she reached later grade school, middle school, she started to lose her hearing. And so at some point along the way, middle school and high school, she needed to learn to play by touch. And again, as a percussionist, she's able to do that. And if you read her essay, hearing essay, you'll see how she does what she does. So she talks about her work as a musician and how she had to adapt herself after losing and gradually losing her hearing when she was a child. So it's a great story, and she's a fabulous musician. Even if you type her name into YouTube on your own, you'll see a lot of other clips of her playing with everybody from other classical musicians, jazz and rock musicians, and to the Muppets. In fact, I forgot to put up the clip where she appears on the Muppets and is playing in a band with Oscar the Grouch. It's a great clip, and I'll put that up next week. So that's one set of readings for next week. The other one is Alyssa Herrera. I gave you two of her short pieces. Alyssa Herrera writes primarily about scent and about perfume. So I think you can kind of see where these paper topics are going, but I'll wait to get to the third reading before I get into it even further. So Alyssa Herrera, you've got two pieces, one about what she calls the perfume diet, which is about her obsession with perfume. But as you can tell by the title, she's also what I guess today would be called a foodie, somebody that's really interested in food. I mean, I think everybody's interested in food, but some people are more obsessive about it than others. So I've also given you an essay with one of her recipes for a sorbet that she was obsessed with, much as she was obsessed with different types of perfume, and then writes about that in an article about a favorite recipe. And then the third of the pieces is a new one. This actually just came out this year, and I was very excited to include at least a portion of it for this class, and that's from Sinead O'Connor, the Irish musician, who just published her memoir earlier this year. It's a wonderful book. I got a chance to read it earlier this year. And so I just took one or two short excerpts from it so that you can sort of see how she connects in. I think she sort of summarizes the other two writers in a way, and that's almost the order in which I would read them. I would read Glenny first, then Herrera, and then Sinead O'Connor last, because I think O'Connor sums up a lot of the themes in those other two writers, not only in terms of music, because again, she's a singer-songwriter, very well-known one. You may not know her as well. She was really popular when I was in high school and when I was first in college, when I was your age. But she's remained fairly popular. She's got a lot of links also to Chicago. When she was recovering from an illness a couple of years ago, she was actually staying here outside of Chicago, I think through the help of Billy Corgan from the band The Smashing Pumpkins. So she's got some Chicago roots, but is from Dublin, still lives in Ireland, and is a great writer in addition to being a great songwriter. So I hope that you enjoy the excerpts from her autobiography. They're very moving, very powerful. And she sort of shows you how she got interested in music. So she, in her writing, shows you how she first discovered that her destiny was to make music. In the first of the readings that I gave you from her book, she talks about the piano that her grandmother had, and the sort of memories that evokes, and the passion that it instilled in her for making music, and also for making social change. She's also been an interesting figure in terms of her social engagement over the years and her commitment to social causes. So she's a really interesting figure, and very, I say this as someone who comes from a predominantly Irish family, she's very Irish also in terms of her sort of very principled ethical beliefs. I recognize a lot of what she says even in my the Irish sides of my family. So anyway, you'll see what I mean. I think when you read more about her, she's very funny, and she's also very principled in her stands. Very good writer, an amazing singer. I'll post some of her clips of music next week. But I think she does sum up the other two pieces that I asked you to read, or the other two writers, because with Glenny, we see how she learns to become an amazing musician that she is, and how she has to relearn how to do what she does because of the loss of her hearing. And then with Alyssa Herrera is going through these different changes and transformations in her life. And so she uses both perfume and these various recipes to sort of start on a new journey. And I think that's what's similar about all three of these. Each one of these writers is on a very new journey that they've embarked upon because of certain life circumstances, and they're pursuing their destiny. They're pursuing the parts of their lives that are most meaningful and powerful to them. So I think you'll also find that all three of these writers are particularly uplifting. I think Susan Sontag, as you probably saw in the last essay, had a much more sarcastic view of certain things like like vacation photos. But these three, as we get to the middle of the semester, I like to use because they, again, are very sort of uplifting, powerful figures. And I hope you find some inspiration as you not only read about them, but start thinking about writing about them. So as I close up this video, the other thing I want to remind you is start this paper sooner. A lot of folks, again, as I said in one of the last videos, asked me, well, how do I do well in your class? How do I become a better writer? And the answers to that, I know, are not satisfying because they tend to be simplistic, at least the ones I give. But writing just takes a lot of practice. You do have to give yourself lead time, as I've said in the other videos. When you get a writing assignment, if you know when the due date is, my idea, and this is why I give you 2 weeks to work on papers, is that the first week or so is you doing the readings and brainstorming ideas and reading over the directions and then starting on your draft. And then the second week should be revising that original draft. That's the way I conceive of having 2 weeks to write a paper, largely because, by the way, that's, as an English major in college, that's usually the amount of time that we had, where we'd have 2 weeks. And I remember professors telling me spend the first week doing the research and the reading and the thinking and the outlining and maybe some drafting. And then the second week is the revision of the drafting, asking for additional help, asking for suggestions. So I would encourage you, and again, everyone has a different working method, but for whatever my advice might be worth, don't start this next paper the day before. Don't start it the day of, because you won't do as well, because again, there's too many moving parts. There's too many options for this paper. And we're going to be getting into using the library database for research after the midterm in October and early November. So again, the more time you can give yourself, even if it's just a little bit every day, working on these assignments, I think you're going to find that you'll be happier, you won't be as stressed, and they'll be way more manageable, because writing takes time. It's like anything else, like drawing, like writing a song, as Sinead O'Connor talks about, like recording a performance. You've got to be patient and take your time and ask for help. As I keep mentioning, the earlier you can ask me for help on a draft, the more time I'm going to have also to devote to reading it and to giving you suggestions. So those are just some things to keep in mind as we get started here on the third paper and as we make our way very soon to the midterm of the semester. So anyway, those are the new readings for next week. It's a brief overview of them. Again, it's Evelyn Glenny, Alyssa Herrera, and Sinead O'Connor. I hope you enjoy them. I like to use these readings, particularly the Herrera and the Glenny, which I've used for years. The Sinead, as I said, is a new one because this book just came out earlier this year. But I try to put these, I like to think of them as more uplifting readings here for the middle of the semester as we get deeper into the fall season and as we also, as I said, get towards the midpoint of the semester. So as always, please email me if you have any questions. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Talk to you then. Bye.